Traci Reed here today with episode number 5 of our Think Outside the 12 by 12 series. Today I'm going to be concentrating on paper strips. So paper strips is an obvious direction to go, but there's a lot of things that you can do with paper strips besides just, laying them down like this underneath your layout. So today I'm actually going to be showing you how to do some fun techniques with rolled paper strips for this page. I'm using the Anywhere But Here collection for this photo of my middle child running across the bridge in Cincinnati. I really want to use this Traveler's Notebook signature as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit it in because it is very large in the composition of this layout. But I'm thinking I'm going to trim it down to the same size as this, maybe even a little bit skinnier since I can cut off a little bit more. And then we're going to be doing a fun rolled paper technique. So let's get started. This layout turned out so fun and more better than I expected, and I love it when that happens. So I did get to use this TN signature. I ended up trimming it down to be as tall as the photo and then as skinny as I could get it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere 2 patterns back to back for each of these paper strips. So because my paper strips are white on the back, because they are printables, they're not 2-sided papers, I have to have 2 papers back to back. Now the paper that I use is a little bit thick, so this was a little bit hard. Not too bad. If I had used Epson Premium presentation paper, it's a little bit thinner, but I got these printed at Office Depot, which uses a bit thicker of paper. So I end up just cutting out a bunch of paper strips from each of these patterns that I want. I try to keep it varied between darker and solid colors as well as the black and white papers. And now I'm going to match them up, what I want on the front and what I want on the back. And then I'm going to roll one more on camera for you so you can see. I just use a pencil or a pen to roll it, and then I use liquid glue and hold it for a second to make sure that it sticks. Now it did take a second of holding for each of these to make sure that it sticks. Make sure you use a strong liquid glue or it will come undone, but it's part of the process, right? So I'm gonna hold this here for a second, turn off the camera, roll the rest of these so you don't have to watch every single one. And now I have all of my paper rolls ready to go. And I want to have them sort of come out diagonally from this composition, and I want them to be staggered. I don't want them to all be in a row. In fact, they're going to be overlapping. I have more than I need, so I'm going to create some fun overlapping, and I'm trying not to make it too perfect. I want it to not be like this perfectly staggered overlapping composition, just because the photo with the Traveler's Notebook signature together creates such a firm, solid base for this layout that I want there to be a little bit of whimsy with these paper rolls. So I don't want them to be perfectly spaced. And so I'm just putting down a bunch, and then I'm going to use the last 2 to bridge that gap, fill in that gap, as well as just cover some up. So you can see, not perfect. I think that adds to it. It makes it a little bit more fun than if I had made it perfect. Now I'm going to stick down the photo and the Traveler's Notebook signature, and the composition will be ready to go. So you can see that I have a lot of space on the top and the bottom. I left more space on the top so that I could add my title up there, but I want to tear this blue cardstock on the top and the bottom at an angle, at the same angle as my composition, so that I can have this really cool Traveler's Notebook size striped little patch up here. Now we are not using 12 by 12 printables. We are only using up to 8.5 by 11 for this series. So I have these Traveler's Notebook papers printed, and so I'm going to use them in the corners. Now you can see I used a pen and I just kind of drew the right angle so that I could follow that line and make sure that my tearing was at the correct angle. It doesn't have to be a perfect tear, obviously, but I do want to make sure that it's at the correct angle. So I just snipped right there because that was the end of that pink stripe. I wanted to make sure I had all the colors of the stripes on both the top and the bottom. So I just snipped it to make sure I had it in the right place. And now I have that paper at the top and the bottom, and it's perfect, and there's still room for the title up there, so that makes me super happy. I'm going to go through what I have left of the Anywhere But Here collection. I have used this collection so many times because I adore it so much that I really don't have a lot of printables left. Luckily, this collection was made into an Echo Park paper collection as well, called Away We Go. So I'm going to pull in some of the Away We Go embellishments too. I'm going to try not to use too many, just because this is about the printables, not about the Away We Go collection. But I will pull in a couple of stickers, as well as this adventure down here is going to be part of my title. I'm also going to bring in some stamp sets from Citrus Twist Kits, an alpha stamp and a travel stamp, because I thought that that would be a good way to add some different texture and dimension to this page without adding too much more than the printable. Now, I stuck that green scallop up there, and I did not realize that it was in the camera. So it is on the screen for a little while. I apologize, but that's pretty funny. So I used these border stickers from the sticker sheet to add a little bit more pattern to my paper strips here. Now I could have just cut down more paper strips and used those, but I saw the patterned stickers, so I went with it. And I'm going to use some of these word bits and signs and all of these icons from the printables to add to this composition before I bring anything else in. I'm going to use that little label for like a where we were, which was Cincinnati, Ohio. And then I'm just kind of creating a little cluster down here at the bottom. I'm going to create one at the top corner of the Traveler's Notebook signature as well. And then a third cluster up in the top corner where that stripe paper meets the blue cardstock. So that will give my, rule of thirds, loving heart. Rule of thirds, that's not what that is. The design rule of threes, loving heart, 3 different clusters to work with. And then I'm also going to add in my title with stamping as well. So you'll see I'm just sort of starting with the printables and then building up the cluster as I go along. There were a few phrases on the stamp set that I wanted to use, and this adventure always matched perfectly. And then I wanted to use this let your heart be your compass as well, but I thought that I would make my own little like die cut out of it, but I did not like the way that that white die cut looked on the blue paper. I thought it would match pretty well with that label down there, but it just didn't look great. So I'm just going to instead stamp directly on my cardstock. This is always a crapshoot. It terrifies me after I've got things going to go ahead and stamp on my cardstock, but it works just fine. Living on the edge here. So initially I was going to put the actual compass from the Anywhere But Here collection stickers in the center of that compass word bit, but I didn't really love the way that it looked. So instead I just brought in the stamp that's meant to go with it on this Citrus Twist stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that in the middle instead. I'm using Catherine Pooler ink, Juniper Mist, which is my favorite navy of hers. Excuse the head while I lean over and make sure I had it aligned. And then this last stamp here is going to be, it says Wild Heart, and I wanted it right here on the edge of this paper strip, which means I had to pull everything back so that I didn't mess up. And oh, look at that, I did it perfect. Now I'm going to keep embellishing with my die cuts, and then I will work on the title as well. So in the blog post for this lesson, there are 9 other interesting ways for you to use paper strips, as well as example layouts from the team of them using paper strips in their layouts. I chose to roll my paper strips. I thought it would be a fun technique that I don't do very often. I don't know if I've ever done it. So I wanted to roll my paper strips, but this isn't the only way that you can use paper strips, obviously. There are a myriad of ways to use them. So I give you 10 examples on the blog post. You're going to want to check that out in the description box below. Maybe even pin it to Pinterest, because it's very informative. This whole series is meant to be informative, not only for your printable pages, but also just in general. These are great design techniques for you to use on all of your 12 by 12 pages. You can adapt them to non 12 by 12 pages, of course, as well. So you're just going to want to check that out. So now I'm adding the stamping to my title. I didn't measure or anything, but I eyeballed and it worked out perfectly. It says life is a wonderful adventure, but I did have two little inky mess ups that I thought about leaving, but I am too much of a perfectionist. So I'm going to incorporate some of these sticker flower clusters that I would have had in the printables as well, but I've already used them. So luckily I had them as stickers. And those gave the clusters those little like spots that they needed, like pops of color, and I really think that that finished out the page. So yay for happy accidents. I'm almost done here. I'm just adding in like random arrows as I see fit. I felt like there just needed to be one more thing, and I ended up adding all of these geotags, and I think that they worked perfectly because they gave those like 3 clustered spots something to really anchor the clusters, but also they have little hearts in them, so I think it matched the theme as well. So just rearranging to my heart's content, and then I'm going to call it good after I add some sequins. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Traci M. Reed. I'd love to see you over there as well. The link to the blog post for this page is in the description box below, and I will see you next time. Thank you.